Now, here's a difference between Larry and Dmitri. When Larry tweets, it's stuff like this: skipping the Nationals game to eat some pie. When Dmitri goes on Twitter, he changes the world. This morning, and the reason we asked Dmitri to be on, although we'd love to have you on it pretty much every night, is you explained something that I knew probably 30% of, but hadn't thought through systematically the way you did, which is why Israel is acting now and what connection does that have to the different points of view about how close Iran is to having a fully formed and usable nuclear device. Dmitri, summarize your thread, please.
Yeah, and I should probably say, why did I publish this thread today? I was getting very annoyed by the media brouhaha over this. What did Tulsi Gabbard say? What is Donald Trump saying about how close Iran is to a nuclear weapon? And one, as I say, it's actually irrelevant to Israeli decision making, because the most important thing that matters to them is, can they take out successfully the program before it's too late? And do they have an administration in the White House that will, A, allow them to do so, which they didn't have under Biden, and will not stop them prematurely before they complete the task, which they believe they have under Trump. That was the driver of the decision. But the broader issue of how far Iran is or is not away from a nuclear weapon is an interesting one. It's a little bit complex. But the reality is that no one can know possibly how far they are because it depends on their pace, right? So all the estimates that you hear from the intelligence community, they're 3 years away or they're a couple months away, are first of all talking about different aspects of what it means to have a nuclear weapon, right? You can have a nuclear weapon that you just detonate as a demonstration, say we're now a nuclear power, versus a nuclear weapon that you now have on a ballistic missile that can do a re-entry through the atmosphere, survive that re-entry, be targeted in an accurate way, etc. Different scope. But it all depends on the estimates, I mean, and the assessments on the current pace of the Iran's nuclear progress. And this has been the longest running nuclear weapons program in history of humanity, right? They started in the 1980s. They actually started under the Shah in the 1970s, and they still clearly don't have a nuke even today. But that pace can accelerate, right? Tomorrow they can decide to make a run for it, and then they can do this probably in a few weeks because judging by history, for example, the United States, once we had enough enriched uranium for the first bomb, little boy that we dropped on Hiroshima, we did it basically in a couple of weeks, right? So enriched uranium is that critical component. So there is nothing to say that Iran couldn't do the same that we did back in 1945. They can also take their time. And Tulsi Gabbard testified in March that the Ayatollah had not yet made a decision to go for a nuclear weapon. Now, that's a really important thing to also disentangle because what he has clearly made a decision to do is have every single component for a nuclear weapon. He just hasn't made a decision to finally assemble one, right? It's akin to having all the IKEA furniture in components on your floor, but you haven't technically decided to put it all together. But clearly you can do that at any moment, right? And the challenge for Israel is that they don't want to wait till that decision is made because A, you may not know, right? You need really exquisite intelligence to be basically in the room to know that that decision had been made. And then it's basically too late because you have a couple of weeks to stop it. And you probably don't have enough capability to do so. So it really has nothing to do with why they decided to go today. And the broader issue of how far Iran is or is not from a nuclear weapon is also kind of a red herring because it's fundamentally unknowable and can change at any moment.
And so, even though it is much discussed, is Tulsi Gabbard right? How close are they? It doesn't matter. The reason they're going now is because this is a window. Trump will let them do it. Biden wouldn't. Iran's weaker than it's been. The proxies are emasculated. They don't control the airspace. Netanyahu has the capacity to do it, and he's doing it, and it has nothing to do with the question of how close they are.
Correct. And if you look at the last two times they've done it, right, this is the third time they're going after a regional nuclear program. The first one was Iraq in 1981 with bombing of the Osirak nuclear reactor. The second one was in 2007, bombing a Syrian reactor that was built by the North Koreans. Both times, both Iraq and Syria, in those cases, were very far away from a nuclear weapon, but the reactors were about to go hot. And in both cases, they were pursuing not a uranium program, but a plutonium-based program. There are two ways to build a nuclear weapon. So reprocessing the fuel from the reactor can give you the plutonium that you need to build a bomb. They didn't weaponize, they didn't have the weaponization program yet in either scenario, but they would have had plutonium And had the reactors gone hot, it would have been impossible for you to bomb them without causing significant environmental damage, radiation, etc. So they went when they could and when they felt like they could do significant damage to both of these programs to either destroy them permanently or set them back for many years. And that's exactly what they're doing today with Iran.
And in both the two previous cases, the evidence suggests they were quite successful.
They were very successful. And by the way, in both those cases, the United States was adamantly against. In 1981, President Reagan actually condemned it, as did the rest of the international community, for this unprecedented act of aggression against Iraq. 10 years later, during Gulf War, everyone was very happy that Saddam Hussein did not have a nuke. And then in 2007, Israelis that had discovered that reactor in the Syrian desert had gone to the Bush administration, asked if the Bush administration would go and bomb it. President Bush said no. They decided to do it on their own.
They say that something that's easy is like a walk in the park. Well, easier than a walk in the park, hit the subscribe button, be part of the two-way community, never miss an episode, be part of our conversations. Thank you for your service to America.